In the book, The Global Achievement Gap by Tony Wagner explains why America's education results and process is very flawed. He explains the difference in three different schools and how they teach their kids. Also, how he talks to numerous CEOs and teachers and people in positions of power in the education and business world. He starts the book out with a conversation he had with Clay Parker, president of the Chemical Management Division of BOC Edwards. He has a conversation with him about what he looks for in an employee, and his answer shocks him. What he found out was that Clay Parker's biggest concern and first thing he looks for at a potential employee is the ability to think critically. This shocks Wagner. Wagner thought that his first concern would be the schooling he had, his degrees and whatnot. But when Parker told him this, Wagner was perplexed and decided to dig deeper into what schools are teaching and how they're teaching classes. After numerous interviews with CEOs and superintendents, he goes into schools to see what they are doing. He is concerned that these kids are not being mentally challenged enough and only just spit back answers on a multiple choice test. He feels this is very wrong and documents it in his notes. Also, while he's doing his observations, he notices a lack of participation in hands-on learning the kids are doing. For example, he was talking about his children, how they had the same fourth grade teacher in the same school and did completely different science projects. He digs deeper into the experiments where teachers would take the kids to a local river and have them cite what they found. But with his other son, it was all just bookwork. In another example, he writes, one class is doing a science project that the teacher has on the board. The group's project goes wrong and does something nobody else's does. Instead of digging deeper, they just wait for the teacher's suggestion and approval. Lastly, he talks about how kids are growing up on digital devices. He talks about how kids are always multitasking and constantly doing more than one thing at a time, from streaming music, taking notes, to talking to friends all at once. In the book 50 Myths and Lies That Threaten American Public Schools, one section is about how if one thing works in one district, it must work in all the others. The quote I picked was, "Perhaps that would be true if education was a simple machine where particular inputs led directly to predictable outlets." This relates to my book because there's a part where he talks about more wealthy schools who take only just a month to prepare for standardized tests, while poor schools teach the entire standardized test for their whole year curriculum. In conclusion, most of what Wagner says is almost everything on my educational soapbox, and I agree with him that kids are not being challenged enough to prepare for the real world.